October 1995, a radio conversation between a U.S. naval ship and Canadian authorities off the fog-bound coast of Newfoundland was recorded in the following transcript. Americans, please divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Canadians, recommend you divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. Americans, this is the captain of a U.S. Navy ship. I say again, divert your course. Canadians, no, I say again, you divert your course. Americans, this is the aircraft carrier USS Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north, that's 15 degrees north, or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship. To which the Canadians responded, this is a lighthouse, your call. This is exactly the question we ponder today. It's actually the question we are preoccupied with throughout this entire High Holy Day period. What are we going to be stubborn about and hold on to in this new year? And what are we going to let go and approach with openness and humility? How are we going to follow the sage advice of Coach Ted Lasso to be a goldfish, acknowledge our mistake and move forward, and as he said after one game of darts, be curious, not judgmental? Judaism has a rich tradition of debate and even disagreement. In fact, our modern Western system of law is based on that tradition. The Talmud, our collection of legal discussions that provides an outline and guide to our modern religious and ritual practice, is one giant assemblage of debates. And while there are many sages cited and quoted in the Talmud, the main protagonists are Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Shammai. And the Talmud records many controversies between them, as well as their students. And in the vast majority, Rabbi Hillel comes out ahead. Yet what is so striking is that the Talmud contains not only Hillel's prevailing opinion, but also Shammai's minority opinion as well, similar to our Supreme Court. So why does the law follow the rulings of the school of Hillel in so many cases? The Talmud explains that the law is often according to the house of Hillel, not because of their superior analysis, but based on the house of Hillel's tone and style of communication and the way they conducted themselves, even in the midst of conflict. The Talmud determines, in fact, that in the many recorded cases in which the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai disagree, the decision follows the house of Hillel because of the fundamental respect they showed to those on the other side of the dispute. The students of Hillel were kind and gracious. They didn't just teach their own ideas. They taught Shammai's ideas and those of the students of Shammai in addition to their own. And we're told, and we see and we read, that they taught Shammai's opinions first. Thus, the Talmud teaches us that receptivity to others' opinions, the ability to admit when one is wrong, adherence to the principles of intellectual integrity, and a devotion to truth are all key characteristics of one who is entering a dispute for the sake of heaven. Our tradition teaches that people can disagree without becoming disagreeable or even enemies. Hillel and Shammai had serious disagreements about many topics, but this did not prevent the two of them from having love and friendship towards each other, and in fact, multiple marriages between the two families. I like to think of Hillel and Shammai as great debaters in the yeshiva and the best of friends outside. They respected one another for their deep passion and the strength of their conviction. They learned from one another and cherished the healthy dialogue and debate, even over their most contested arguments. In the end, they recognized that they were part of the same family. They were rewarded for the respect they showed for an opinion that was different from their own. Now, if that was true nearly 2,000 years ago, how much more is that type of respect worth in our day, an age in which there is less and less tolerance for different perspectives and school of thought? The political journalist and historian Theodore White once noted that when you press a block of pure gold against a block of steel, they exchange molecules with each other. He said, when people are pressed close, they act the same way. Part of you enters them, part of them enters you. Long after you might forget times and places, they're still a part of you. I love this image. It parallels the teaching of Rabbi Simeon ben Elazar of the 2nd century CE, who was no doubt influenced by the teachings of Hillel and Shammai, and he was known to say, "Be pliable like a reed, not rigid like a cedar." What a relevant message to us on Yom Kippur, the Day of Judgment, in this year 5784. Our Machzor, our High Holy Day prayer book, teaches that we stand before God, each of us held accountable only for our own actions. Yet as the level of civility and respect has eroded in our society, when people can hide behind the facade of anonymity that social media provides, when we are not face-to-face as often, many have taken it upon themselves to be both judge and jury. As Rabbi Shankman shared last week, in the years that she spent working in the field of depolarization, it was not about trying to convince someone to change their position to yours. Rather, it's about understanding their position so that we can have healthy, raw, honest, respectful discourse and a deep conversation in which we recognize that we both hold on strongly to our beliefs, and it is okay for us to disagree. Think about the people you love. How many of us here can share that we've never had a disagreement? Perhaps we don't have to think back that far. Hopefully we've already gotten to the Yom Kippur apologizing for that, but it happens. Our society as a whole has deteriorated from the days when we were guided by the statement, "I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Now, whether those words were spoken by Voltaire or Patrick Henry, these days even the internet can't agree on the sources, the underlying sentiment was one of inherent respect. Seder Eliyahu Rabbah depicts God as imploring us, "My beloved children, am I in want of anything that I should request of you? But what I ask of you is that you should love, honor, and respect one another." It is precisely because we love, honor, and respect one another that we must find a way to talk about the issues of our day, the issues we care about, even if we disagree, especially if we disagree. If we don't talk about issues of substance, then we are not truly engaging in the work of the Jewish people, the work that Judaism and the Torah has addressed from our very origins. Our Torah is our guide to morality. We have a responsibility to speak, yes, even from the Bima, about the issues we confront in our everyday lives. The issues we confront in our society today are not all that different from those addressed by our biblical ancestors. We just have many more centuries of material to sift through in finding our answers. Rabbis, colleagues around the world are preaching about the matters of our time: climate change, reproductive rights, immigration, equity, LGBTQ+ rights, civil rights, democracy, Israel. Our prophets preach social justice and care for all, and Reform Judaism was created to be a response to modernity, a way of engaging with our modern reality and exploring such issues through a Jewish lens, so much so that it was often referred to as prophetic Judaism. Tomorrow we will read the Haftarah taken from chapter 58 of the book of Isaiah, in which we are instructed, "Cry with full throat without restraint, raise your voice like a ram's horn." Rabbi Pinchas Shapiro, the Koritzer Rebbe, struggled with that verse, wondering, what could it mean? How can a voice become like a shofar? And then he realized the shofar remains silent and cannot emit a sound unless the breath of a person passes through it. When we become like a shofar, the breath of the Holy One, God, passes through us out into the world. Our rabbis understood this to mean that when we witness injustice, we must speak out. When we hear hatred of any kind, we should challenge it. It is that very message that inspires the sounding of the shofar that accompanies us throughout these high holy days. It is our clarion call to us to right the injustices of our world. This year, we have responded to the sound of the shofar, and we will continue to amplify its call in the face of ever-growing levels of cynicism, disrespect, and vitriol, which many have already expressed fear will only increase as we approach another election cycle. In his recent article, How America Got Mean, David Brooks wrote, "We inhabit a society in which people are no longer trained in how to treat others with kindness and consideration. Our society has become one in which people feel licensed to give their selfishness free rein." He goes on to say that we live in a society that's terrible at moral formation and suggests that morally formative institutions hold up a set of ideals. They provide practical pathways toward a meaningful existence. Here's how you can dedicate your life to serving the poor, or protecting the nation, or loving your neighbor. Now, where have we heard those words before? While we may at many times disagree on how to respond, as Jews we recognize Judaism's emphasis on being engaged and involved, which is why we devote so much time and energy exploring what Jewish text and tradition teach through respectful debate and dialogue. But there is one issue about which I hope we will continue to be united and stand together, because to do otherwise threatens our very existence. That increase of meanness that David Brooks references has led to an acceptance of hatred against others and has emboldened those who direct their hatred toward Jews. We have witnessed a rise of anti-Semitism that some suggest has been simmering beneath the surface and has been unleashed and enabled by prevailing sentiments and a general aura of hatred and intolerance in our society. In 2020, a group of Jewish organizations came together to chart a path forward and a strategy to collectively fight anti-Semitism. And they ultimately developed the Dismantling Anti-Semitism Message Guide, in which they asserted, "We believe that every person, no matter our religion, where we come from, or what we look like, deserves to live with freedom, safety, and belonging. As Jews, we know that whether we're walking down the streets of our neighborhoods or through the doors of our holy spaces, freedom and safety for any of us depends on the freedom and safety of all of us." And they go on to write, "There are some people who seek to build a country that's only for themselves and people like them, dividing us against each other and making us afraid while they hoard power and wealth. As Jews, we know how dangerous this is. When people target Jewish people and blame us for hard times, it leads directly to violence against us. Anti-Semitism is part of the machinery of division and fear those people rely on for power, the same machinery those people use to blame Black and brown people, people who are immigrants, people who are Muslim, and more. But whether they manufacture division and fear based on our religion, our skin color, or how long we've been here, their goal is to keep us from working together to obtain the things we all need to thrive. When Jewish people join together with our neighbors across difference as we have in the past, we can shut down the fear factory and protect each other. We'll show up for each other every time one of us is targeted because of our differences, and reject any person or group who uses fear to divide us against each other. Together, we can build a country that fulfills the promise of freedom and safety for all of us, no exceptions." I'm proud that our Reform movement was among the authors of these words and this important guide. And we are well aware that there is an ever-growing list of examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, and in the religious sphere, which attempt to create fear in the Jewish community and attempt to isolate us from others, while also having the potential to foment violent acts against individual Jews or the Jewish community. We have witnessed a sharp increase in public declarations of anti-Semitism by major celebrities that has only served to normalize expressions of anti-Semitism. We must continue to raise our shofar and cry with our full voice. This past year, we have stood up against anti-Semitism at many moments as a congregation. Your WHC clergy were present when the Montgomery County Council voted to pass a resolution to address and combat anti-Semitism based on the IHRA definition. Our clergy will continue to speak up, and we hope that you will join us at our schools, in our various community councils, at forums addressing anti-Semitism. We will continue to speak up with speakers and classes addressing the rise in anti-Semitism. We will continue to speak up as we did this past year at Whitman High School, at Churchill High School, at BCC High School, and others to support our students experiencing anti-Semitism in the classroom, on the athletic fields, and in their extracurricular activities. We will continue to speak up at interfaith gatherings as we strengthen our relationships and connections and show up for our neighbors as they show up for us. We will continue to speak up at the Montgomery County Council, where I now serve as one of the Jewish representatives to the newly formed Anti-Hate Task Force, and on the Mayor's Interfaith Council in DC as well. We will continue to speak up, not only for ourselves, but for others in our community. And in this new year, Washington Hebrew is proud to be participating in ADL's Kulanu, Synagogues in Action Against Anti-Semitism. Many of you know that we were part of the original joint pilot program between the ADL and the URJ, and are part of a network of hundreds of congregations across the United States and Canada committed to the critical work of combating anti-Semitism and hate in all its forms. With rampant anti-Semitism and hate on the rise, Kulanu will empower us to address these issues using a whole-of-society approach through self-driven programming, expanded incident reporting, and community mobilization. ADL's Kulanu program will guide us as we forge formative relationships in our community through collaboration and bridge building between our synagogue and our neighbors. We can best withstand the challenge of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate when we value one another's humanity. We can do this by listening to each other's stories and sharing our own with those within our congregation and those from other faith communities as well. Let us commit to being in community together, even if we see some issues, certain issues, very differently. We will build an even stronger community when we create an open and honest space in which to express not only our shared perspectives, but those about which we disagree. As we reflect on the promise of a new year, I hope you will stand with us. In the darkest of times, we as a people have continued to bind ourselves together, to look towards the future and commit to building a better tomorrow. Let us build that better tomorrow together in this place as we create a WHC community where all belong, forged through respectful and honest dialogue. And may it be a community of which both Hillel and Shammai would be proud. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May that be God's will.